I said something in last week's video that seems to have struck a chord with a few people. What I said was that it's always easier to not do the thing. And I'm not surprised to be feeling that way on a day like today. I have a policy to not debate politics on the internet, but I just wrote something on Twitter that I wanted to share with you. Me being up on the latest news, watching distressing phone footage from people under attack, or debating online about what's right or wrong won't make the slightest difference to what's going on right now. The 24-hour news cycle is something I gave up a long time ago, not because I don't care about others or wish to be ignorant of what's happening in the world, but because its unstoppable onslaught is not good for my human brain. I don't think we need to feel guilty for living our lives or sharing whatever we want to share, because that's an expression of the freedom we're so fortunate to have. Reading more long-form, thought-out things has educated me far more and been far less pointlessly upsetting than this horror-filled, fly-on-the-wall view we can have if we choose to click on everything. Look after your mental health, be kind, help if you can, and do what matters to you. I'll put a donation link for the people of Ukraine in the description box on this video. Donating money, if you're able, is a really good practical thing you can do. I finished my little tweet thread with, "Now I'm going to put my phone in the kitchen cupboard and film the video I had planned." On a day like today, it's entirely reasonable to think that the things we're spending our time on are frivolous in comparison to the things that other people are going through. And in my music career, I've often felt that way. I often feel that what I do is frivolous and fluffy and not meaningful. But when I share thoughts like that, I'm often reminded by people of how important the arts are to them in their daily lives. So I try to keep hold of that idea when I'm feeling like I do today, that what I do doesn't matter. What I do doesn't matter any less today than it did yesterday or than it will do tomorrow because of the actions of someone in another country. And the same goes for you. The reason that social media exists in the first place is to connect people. Why do you think I'm sitting in my room, talking into a camera, feeling like a bit of an idiot? It's because I want to connect with you in a meaningful way. And the way I can do that is by taking my own advice from last week to keep showing up. So here I am, beaming in to say, hello, I see you, you matter, I matter, we all matter, this matters. So let's get to that video I had planned, which is talking about gigs. I asked you what you would ask me about gigs, and as always, you asked the most excellent questions. Chris Norman asks, as a professional musician, do you view gigs as a necessity or a treat, or somewhere in between or somewhere else altogether? I've never been pro as such, but when I was doing gigs, I always struggled with the idea of having them as work. I always wanted them to be the more celebratory bit after the craft of creating something and the work involved in producing it. I was never attracted to the idea of having to do them. Chris, is it telling that I read this as a professional musician, do you view gigs as a necessity or a threat? I've had a complicated relationship with gigs over the past little while. I don't even mean the last 2 years. I started playing gigs when I was a teenager, when I was 15. Before that, I'd played a lot of school concerts. I was playing school concerts from the age of 7. Yeah, on all sorts of different instruments and singing and stuff. So live performance is something I've been doing since I was really small. It became a very big part of my life in my 20s. I started getting work playing for other people, getting paid, so that it was my job then. So I love the way that Chris describes a gig as being a treat or a celebration. I think that's probably the ideal. Aside from my paid gigging experience, I also played around 600 shows solo, playing my own music, around the UK, around Europe, and a few gigs in other countries. In 2019, I started winding down my last solo project, She Makes War, because I knew I wanted to launch Penfriend in 2020. And part of that announcement was that I was not going to be playing gigs for a good long while, I think was the phrase I used. Little did I know what was coming and how I would be prevented from playing gigs for a good long while, but my intention was to have a break because I really needed one. I suppose I felt that I had to do gigs because I just did gigs, that was what my life was. And so the idea of taking a break was to rest from that, to finish the record I was writing, Exotic Monsters, and then to come back refreshed. I actually think there are far more effective ways of getting your music out there. And maybe, as Chris suggested in his question, gigs could just be the icing on the cake. They could be the celebration of all the hard work. The great reasons for playing gigs, which is being in a room with a bunch of people who want to hear music and playing your music and having that unique experience, that communal feeling, that is pure magic, and that is something that can't be replicated doing anything else. But if your aim as a musician is to actually spread the word of your music, then driving to lots of different towns to play music to people who haven't heard you yet and might like you really is not the most effective way. I've learned a lot over the past couple of years because I've actually had time to be at home and learn things and not be away all the time. And so when I do return to live in-person shows, which I hope won't be too far into the future, I will be doing things quite differently. I actually played a show in this room last night, which is why the rest of the room that you cannot see is horrendously messy. I haven't packed anything away yet because I'm going to film my live stream setup so that I can share it with you next week. That's my excuse anyway. Oh dear, I'll just have to tidy up tomorrow. I started playing a few online shows a year from 2013 onwards. And when I decided in 2019 I was going to stop playing live for a while, I invested a little bit of money and quite a lot of time in upgrading my setup so that I could have much higher quality audio going into the computer. Online gigs obviously are very different from going to a venue and having someone set everything up for you, playing to people in a room, getting the instant feedback of applause or sad faces or whatever people might give you. They can be really difficult to set up, they can be quite uncomfortable to play. But after doing quite a few, I'm fine with all that. And the benefits are huge. I get to play to people all around the world, all at once. People who wouldn't be able to get a babysitter, people who wouldn't be able to afford to come to a show, people with accessibility issues, people who wouldn't be comfortable on public transport late at night. Everyone with an internet connection can attend the gig, and that's a beautiful thing. And last night, finally, after a lot of research and a lot of testing and a lot of messing things up, I finally got the live stream setup of my dreams working perfectly. Fingers crossed for next time. But I've written everything down. I'm going to film it all tomorrow to show you. And you don't have to take my word for it. The entire live stream is available to watch whenever you want, wherever you are. I'll put the link in the description. Back to these questions. D. McCann asks, do you have any advice on what to do if you forget part of a song? Amusingly, last night I was able to demonstrate what I do in real time. Capsize my only friend. I'm going. I'm gonna do that again. And as I said to Dee in my reply, laugh and carry on is usually my way. In my experience, people are happy to see something unique as long as you persevere and triumph in some way, or make it into an opportunity to tell a story or something like that. As long as you seem confident and in charge of the situation, they'll be okay too. When playing with or for others and forgetting things, I would just keep going and fudge my way to the next bit I knew. Or usually, when playing bass, it's better to just stop playing and pick it back up again when you know where you are. I've reasonably often sung the wrong lyrics in a verse. And if that happens, I don't stop the song because live music isn't about perfection. It's about me being in a room with someone else. It's about me conveying my thoughts and feelings through my music to other people. And that's about way more than the song. It's about my physical human presence. So much of what we communicate is non-verbal, right? And this is something I have to remind myself of because if I sing a little bit out of tune or I get some words wrong or I mess up on the guitar or something, I'll often think, oh, I got the song wrong, people won't like it, they must think and there's a lot of time to think when you're playing your own songs, especially when there's no audience there to take your mind off it. But I do try to remind myself of that. And you know, when I go and see a gig, I'm not there to see the most perfect vocal performance or the most perfect guitar performance from this person. I'm interested in the person who made the music. So the things that make a live performance unique are not perfection, but imperfection. In fact, I once went to see Tool play in the early 2000s and it was so perfect, it was absolutely boring. I really like Tool. I've never been to see them since. Buffy Fantastico asks, are you in the same / mostly the same set every night, or a nice bit of variety camp for those that do multiple shows, and could even be completely different? And 2, do you feel obligated to play certain songs, the hits, to ensure people go away happy having seen their favourites? Or is it more of a, you get what you get, and if that happens to be the entirety of a new album and some random B-sides, then so be it? That is a great question. I definitely remember saying to Tim, my husband, that people will get what they're given, but I never meant that in a mean way. I've played in bands before where the person in charge second-guessed themselves so much that they would change the set depending on the kind of people they thought might be in the audience that night based on the venue or someone they'd met or who even knows what it was. And I really disagreed with that, but it wasn't my band, so I couldn't say anything about it. But the reason I disagreed is because I've written some songs, right? And I'm trying to express something to you. Now, I don't know exactly what you like, but if I tried to guess who you are and what exactly you would like, I wouldn't be communicating my thing anymore. And I would just be trying to please you, someone I haven't met yet. And then if you think about the fact that there's not only one person at the gig, there's hopefully lots, maybe hundreds of people, all with different likes and dislikes and opinions. I couldn't possibly guess what every single one of those people would want from me, the artist, that night at the show, let alone do anything to please all of them. So that's what I mean by they'll get what they're given. I, the artist, will get on that stage and communicate the things I want to communicate, and hopefully there'll be some people in the audience that resonates with, but it's probably not going to be everyone, and that's fine. That's why it is so different playing a headline slot versus playing a support slot. If I could play to between 100 and 500 people a night who knew my music and had chosen to be there to listen to my music, that would be such a dream. But a pretty large percentage of the gigs that I've played as a solo artist are as support for someone else, and that's just about hoping to win some people over who like the thing that you've brought along. So if we actually have met before and you saw me support one of your favourite artists, thank you so much for sticking with me. I really appreciate that. I like the second part of that question as well, about playing the hits. And I think that is important, because if there are certain songs that you play that are your big songs and people want to hear those songs, I can't think of any good reason to not give them that thing. It's only been a few years since I realised something really major that made me shift my thinking on a lot of stuff. We talked about this quite a lot in my podcast series, Attention Engineer, actually. And it's the idea of asking myself the question, what do I want to give versus what do I want to get? So if I was to view gigs as something I'm trying to get something from, it might not cross my mind that people have come to watch me play a certain song. But if I'm in the frame of mind, what can I give, which is ultimately more rewarding in every aspect of life, then I probably am going to think in that way. It is difficult though, and I mean tiny violin difficult, when you've got so many albums. I've got 5 albums now. It's very difficult when you've got a lot of albums to choose which songs to play in a set. And honestly, if someone offered me a 30-minute support slot these days, I've got no idea what I would play. And you know, when you release a brand new album, you want to introduce people to the new songs. So then most of the set would probably be the new material, because that's what you're most excited about and that's what you're telling people about at the moment. But I know there are certain songs I could always put into the set and they'd make people really happy. And why wouldn't I want to make people really happy? And the final comment here is from Wrong Pop. I don't have a question, but I want to say that I respect your stance on not playing gigs for a while until you feel it's safe to do so. And I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Steve. This coming Tuesday is the first anniversary of the video that I made about why I was choosing not to play gigs in 2021. In the last few days, I've got messages from quite a lot of people asking if I'm going to be touring in 2021. And rather than reply with an abrupt hell no to every single one of them, I thought this topic deserved a bit more nuance, and I think there's a conversation to be had around this. I sat almost exactly right here in the launch pad and I talked into a camera and I felt sick with nerves, not just because I wasn't used to talking into the camera, because I hadn't done anything on YouTube for a really long time. I genuinely had this funny physical feeling that this was important, that I needed to say this, but also that it was something where I could potentially get a lot of kickback, a lot of hate perhaps. And I don't know how or why it got so popular so fast, but I set it to go live on a Monday afternoon, just after work, just after 6 o'clock. And within a day it had about 3,500 views and shed loads of comments, mostly from people who felt the same as me and were just pleased that someone was saying it. And thinking back to that reminds me of the reasons that we do things like this. The more songs I've written, the more I've realised that they're not just for me to express myself, but for me to express things that I know that other people want to express. The music I love the most says something that I couldn't say myself, but that I agree with in some way. And so I've learned that only really by expressing myself honestly, expressing myself fully, trying to get to know myself more and more, to be more and more myself, which can be really hard and has been really hard for me in my life. Only by doing that can I connect with people who will find what I'm saying or what I'm singing useful. And so it's really not about what I'm trying to get, but what I'm trying to give. So what are you trying to give? Give it a go. That's all I've done, and I'm so glad I found you. And if you know what you want to give, but you're not quite sure how to get there, watch this video about the life-changing power of showing up. I'll be showing up again next week, so I hope to see you then.